Hey, before we dive in, if you've ever done something brave without even thinking about it, this story is going to hit different. Stick around, because this one, it's going to keep you guessing till the very end. And don't forget to like and subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. She kissed him, and the whole world went silent. Not gradually, not in pieces. All at once, like someone had reached into the night and pulled the sound right out of it. The laughter stopped. The clinking of glasses stopped. The low, expensive murmur of 200 guests outside the Astor House Hotel in downtown Memphis, Tennessee, all of it gone. Swallowed whole by 4 seconds of pure, stunned silence. And in those 4 seconds, every single person on those hotel steps had the exact same thought. Who in the world does she think she is? Because nobody kissed Jisoo Young. Not like this. Not uninvited. Not in public, in front of cameras, in front of people who knew his name and what it carried. The guests who recognized him, and enough of them did, felt something cold move through them the moment they registered who the man in the black suit was. Some of them took a small, instinctive step backward without realizing they had moved at all. You did not walk up to Jisoo Young. You did not grab him. You certainly did not press your lips to his in front of half of Memphis, like it was the most natural thing you had ever done in your life. And yet, here was this woman, this complete stranger in a dark green dress, natural hair pinned at the back of her neck, no name tag, no escort, no obvious reason for being anywhere near him, doing exactly that. Both hands gripping the lapels of his jacket, close enough that there was no space between them. Her lips on his like she had rehearsed this moment, or like she had never thought about it once, and both somehow looked the same from the outside. Phone screens rose into the air without people deciding to lift them. A woman in silver sequins grabbed her companion's arm hard enough to leave fingerprints. Someone near the back of the crowd said, in a voice too astonished to stay quiet, asterisk, who I asked that? Asterisk. Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Jisoo Young's 4-man security team had gone completely rigid at their posts. Not moving. Not speaking. Not intervening. Because their training covered everything: hostile vehicles, armed approaches, crowd surges, aggressive physical contact. It did not cover this particular category of situation. And in the half-second of uncertainty, where none of them could decide whether this was a threat or something else entirely, they did what confusion always forces people to do. Nothing. Inside that silence, Amelia Harper was doing math. Fast math. Necessary math. The kind you do when the window for doing anything useful is closing faster than you can think. She had seen the shape in the third-floor window of the parking garage across the street the second she turned the corner onto Madison. A figure, low behind the concrete edge. Something long and narrow resting against the lip of the wall. Angled downward, pointed at the hotel steps. She knew what that shape was. She had seen it before. In a different city, in a different year, in the middle of a situation she had spent the last 2 years trying to put behind her. A sniper. Already positioned. Already locked on. And Jisoo Young was walking, slowly, unhurried, completely unaware, directly into that shot. She had maybe 3 seconds. Shouting a warning would freeze the crowd and give the shooter a cleaner line. Grabbing Jisoo and pulling him sideways would look like an attack, and his security would drop her before she cleared 2 steps. Running toward the garage would accomplish nothing in 3 seconds. But confusion, real, visible, public confusion, that could work. A sniper needs a clean shot. A still target. No witnesses with cameras already pointed at the scene. Give him 40 phone screens and 200 witnesses all staring at exactly the wrong moment, and he has nothing. So she collided with Jisoo on purpose. Let his drink hit the pavement. And before his security could process the contact, before he could step back and create distance, she grabbed his jacket and kissed him. And the crowd went silent. And the shot never came. Amelia counted to 3 inside her head. Felt the weight of every eye in that crowd pressing down on the two of them. Felt the controlled, coiled stillness of the man in front of her, because he had gone completely still. Not stiff. Not panicked. Just waiting, the way something dangerous waits, with its whole self. Then she pulled back just enough, a breath barely, and turned her face so her lips were at his ear. Her voice came out quieter than quiet. There's a bomb in your car. She felt it move through him. Not a flinch. Not a gasp. Something smaller and more deliberate than both. A single, almost invisible shift. Like a door locking from the inside. Which one, he said. Not a question. Flat as pavement. Black SUV. across from the valet stand. He did not look at it, did not turn his head even slightly. Just absorbed the information, filed it, acted on it in the span of 2 seconds like the information had simply confirmed something he had already half suspected. Then, smoothly, as if they had simply finished a quiet conversation at a perfectly ordinary party, he straightened, took one calm step to the left, away from the street, and turned to the nearest guard and said something low and clipped that moved like a current underwater. There and gone before anyone nearby caught a word. The guard's face changed immediately, hand to earpiece. A look exchanged, a ripple moving through the team like a signal passed down a wire. Amelia started stepping back into the crowd. She was almost at the edge of it. Boom. The sound hit before the light did, a deep, physical wall of pressure that arrived in your chest before your ears had time to name it. Then the fire came, orange and enormous, erupting from across the street where the black SUV had been sitting at the curb like any ordinary car on any ordinary Friday night. The windows of the vehicle blew outward. Metal screamed. Both sides of the block lit up orange and white, and the car alarm started going off in a chorus that had no end. The crowd broke. People ran in every direction. People screamed. People grabbed each other and crouched and stood frozen with their hands pressed to the sides of their faces. Valets sprinted away from the curb. A woman dropped her clutch and did not stop to pick it up. Amelia moved through all of it without running. Running makes people remember you. So she walked, controlled pace, eyes ahead, shoulders level, toward the corner of Madison and Main. 20 feet. 15. A hand closed around her wrist. Not rough, but completely certain. The kind of grip that does not ask permission and does not expect argument. She turned. Jisoo Young stood behind her. The fire across the street painted one side of his face orange and left the other in shadow. All around them the crowd was moving, screaming, falling apart, and he was standing completely still inside all of it, looking at her with an expression that had no single clean name. Not fury, not relief, not suspicion. All three, underneath something colder than any of them. You knew, he said. Let go of my wrist, Amelia said. You knew there was a bomb in my car. And you're standing here because of it. Who are you? The sirens were close now. Red and blue light was already bouncing off the hotel windows. His team was moving guests back, working the perimeter, doing what they were trained to do. But Jisoo was not moving, was not looking at any of it, only at her. And she had the feeling, the deep, uncomfortable, skin-level feeling, that he was memorizing her face. Not casually, deliberately. The way you memorize something you have decided you will need again and cannot afford to forget. Nobody, she said. That is not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. The silence between them lasted exactly long enough to be its own kind of statement. Then his hand dropped from her wrist. She turned, walked into the chaos, did not look back, did not run, but she felt his eyes on her back every single step until the crowd finally swallowed her whole. Her name was Amelia Harper, 28, originally from Huntsville, Alabama, though she had not been back in 4 years and had no plans to change that. She lived now in a second-floor apartment in Binghamton, a Memphis neighborhood that was not fancy and did not pretend to be. Radiator that banged through winter nights. A neighbor named Miss Odette, who played gospel music on Sunday mornings with complete and joyful disregard for volume. On paper, she was a freelance translator. Korean, Mandarin, some Japanese. All learned during 3 years in Seoul that she described to people as simply time abroad and left the rest of it folded up and out of sight. She had been at the Astor house that night because of a message. Anonymous. Sent to an email address that only 2 other people alive knew existed. She had received it 3 days ago. 1 sentence. No greeting. No name. Asterisk the wolf will be eliminated Friday night. Corner of Madison and Main. You know what to do. Asterisk. She had stared at it for 2 hours without moving, because she did not know what to do. But she knew the name. She knew Jisoo Young the way you know the name of a fire you once got too close to. Not because you chose it, but because the heat stayed on your skin long after you stepped back. 2 years ago, she had briefly, accidentally translated documents for an organization she had been told was a Korean trade consultancy. She had worked through a middleman. She had never met anyone. And she had stopped completely, immediately, the moment she understood what she had actually been reading. But you cannot unread something. And you cannot unknow a face you have seen in a photograph attached to documents that were never meant for your eyes. So when the message came, she went. And she saw what she saw. And now she was back in her apartment at 11:47 at night, sitting on the edge of her bed with her shoes still on, the smell of smoke still faint in her hair. Her phone sat on the mattress. She opened the anonymous email. New message. Just sent. 3 words. He saw you. Amelia set the phone face down on the mattress and sat with the quiet. The radiator banged. The street below was empty. Somewhere far off, a siren was fading. She thought about Jisoo Young's face in the firelight. That expression she could not name. The way he had stood completely still while the world collapsed around him and looked at her like she was a problem he had already decided to solve. You knew. Yeah, she knew. And now he knew she knew. Which meant the quiet, careful, deliberately invisible life she had been building for 2 years was already cracking somewhere along its edge. She could feel it the way you feel a hairline fracture before anything actually breaks, just a faint, wrong pressure in a place that should be solid. She took her shoes off, set them neatly by the door, sat back down. She did not sleep that night. But sometime around 2 in the morning, when the city had gone quiet enough to think, she made a decision. She needed to find out who sent that email. Because whoever they were, they knew her address. They knew her history. They knew she would recognize the name, and they knew she would show up. And people who know that much about you are either trying to protect you, or they are already using you for something you have not agreed to yet. In Amelia Harper's experience, it was almost never the first one. The next morning came gray and humid, the way Memphis mornings do in early October. The kind of gray that sits on everything and makes the whole city look like it is still thinking about whether to wake up or not. Amelia had not slept. She had spent the hours between 2 and 6 sitting at her small kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and the anonymous email open on her laptop, reading it over and over like the 3 words might eventually expand into something more useful. They did not. He saw you. That was all. No follow-up. No explanation. No instruction. Just a warning dressed up as a fact. By 6:15 she had made a list. Not on paper. Never on paper. But in her head, ordered and specific the way she had trained herself to think when things got complicated. What she knew. What she did not know. What she needed to find out. And what, if she was being completely honest with herself, she was probably already too late to avoid. The list was not encouraging. What she knew, Jisoo Young was alive because of her. Someone had tried to kill him with both a sniper and a car bomb on the same night, which meant the attempt was organized, layered, and backed by serious resources. Someone who knew her email address had sent her there on purpose. And Jisoo had memorized her face. What she did not know, everything else. What she needed to find out, who sent the message, and why they needed her specifically to be the one standing on that corner. What she was probably too late to avoid, Jisoo Young looking for her. She closed the laptop at 6:30 and went to get dressed. By 9 in the morning, she was parked on Germantown Parkway in a used silver Honda that she had bought with cash 18 months ago, specifically because it was the 3rd most common car color in Memphis, and nobody looks twice at a silver Honda. She was parked across from a tree line that bordered the eastern edge of a property, so large it barely looked real from the road. The Young estate. She had found the address through property records, public information, nothing illegal, though she had routed her search through 3 different connections to make sure it could not be traced back to her laptop. The estate sat on 11 acres in one of the quieter parts of Germantown, which was itself one of the quieter parts of the Memphis metropolitan area. Old money neighborhood, wide streets, houses set back from the road behind gates and hedgerows, and the kind of careful landscaping that says we do not need to show off because we already know. The Young property had a 10-foot iron perimeter fence, cameras at every visible corner, a guardhouse at the main gate with 2 men in it at all times. She had been watching long enough to confirm that. Black vehicles coming and going in pairs. Everything precise. Everything deliberate. Everything, from the outside, looking completely ordinary. But Amelia was not looking at the gate or the cameras or the guards. She was looking at the tree line to the east. The section of fence where the property curved away from the road and into a shallow drainage ditch that the landscapers had planted over with thick bushes. A section that, from any camera angle she could calculate based on the corner positions, sat in a blind spot approximately 4 feet wide. Maybe. Probably. She was not certain. But it was the best option she had. Because she had to get inside. Not because she wanted to. Not because she had any interest in walking back into the world she had spent 2 years carefully walking out of. But because sometime between her second cold cup of coffee and the pale gray Memphis sunrise, she had realized something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The bomb in the SUV had been planted by someone who knew Jisu's schedule that night, his route, which vehicle he would be using. You do not plant a bomb in the right car by accident. You plant it in the right car because someone told you which car to use. Someone inside. And if that someone was still inside, still close to Jisu, still trusted, still with access, then last night had not been the end of anything. It had been the first attempt. She pulled her jacket tighter, checked the street in both directions, and got out of the car. She made it to the blind spot in the fence without being seen. Probably. She was almost sure of it. The drainage ditch was deeper than it looked from the road, which worked in her favor, and the bushes were dense enough to move through slowly without creating the kind of movement that triggers peripheral vision. The fence up close was worse than it looked from the road. 10 feet of iron. Vertical bars spaced too narrow to squeeze through, topped with horizontal rails but no spikes, which was either an oversight or a sign that the Jung estate relied more on cameras and guards than physical barriers. Either way, it was climbable. She had climbed worse. She got 3 feet off the ground before the voice came. Stop. Low. Flat. Absolutely certain. She stopped. 2 of them, coming from her left, moving fast through the bushes parallel to the fence. She had not seen them, and that told her they had been watching the blind spot deliberately, which meant it was not actually a blind spot, which meant they had been waiting. Her stomach dropped. The first guard reached her before she could get back to the ground. A large man, close-cut hair, the particular expression of someone who has caught someone doing exactly what they expected them to do. He grabbed her arm and pulled, not gently, and she came off the fence and hit the ground on both feet and immediately tried to pull free. He did not let go. She was climbing the fence, the second guard said into his earpiece. Matter of fact. Reporting. I need to speak to Jisu Jung, Amelia said. Clearly. Calmly. Sure you do, the first guard said. I'm not a threat. I have information he needs. That's what the last person said. They were pulling her toward the gatehouse now, her heels dragging on the wet grass, her arm twisted at an angle that was not painful yet, but was making a clear promise about the future. Last night, she said, raising her voice slightly. The bomb. The SUV on Madison. I'm the one who told him. The guards exchanged a look. Not the look of people who believed her. The look of people who had been specifically told to watch for someone who might show up with exactly that kind of story. She's the one, the second guard said into the earpiece. A pause. Listening. Then copy. The grip on her arm tightened, and Amelia realized, with a cold clarity that settled into her chest like ice water, that whatever Jisu had told his team about last night, whatever description he had given of the woman in the dark green dress, it had not come with instructions to welcome her. It had come with instructions to hold her. They brought her to the gatehouse and sat her in a chair, and the questions started immediately. Not rough, not threatening in any obvious way, but relentless in that particular security professional style that is less about getting answers and more about watching how you respond when the pressure stays constant. Who sent you? Who do you work for? Why were you at the gala? How did you know about the bomb? She answered the questions she could answer safely and stayed quiet on the ones she could not, which frustrated them in a way they were trained not to show but showed anyway around the edges. They called her the assassin twice. The second time, something in Amelia's patience snapped clean in half. I am not the assassin, she said. Quiet, completely level. The assassin was in the parking garage across the street. I stopped the shot by creating a distraction. Then I warned him about the bomb. If I wanted Jisu Jung dead, he would be dead, because I was standing close enough to him last night to make that very easy. And instead I am the reason he is alive and standing in whatever room he is standing in right now. Silence in the gatehouse. The 2 guards looked at each other. Keep her here, the first one said, and went outside with his phone. The second guard stayed, positioned between Amelia and the door, arms crossed, watching her with the careful, flat attention of someone who has been told not to make a decision either way until someone smarter makes it first. Amelia looked at the door, looked at the guard, looked at the single window on the south wall of the gatehouse, which was latched but not locked, which she had noticed the moment they brought her in because noticing exits was something her body did automatically now, the same way it breathed. The guard's phone buzzed. He looked down at it for 1 second, maybe less. Amelia was at the window before the second was finished. Latch up, frame shoved, body through in one motion that was not graceful but was fast, landing in the gravel on the interior side of the gate. One knee down, up immediately moving. Hey! She ran. Across the interior driveway. Past the first row of parked vehicles. Toward the main house, which was the only direction that made any sense because going back to the fence meant going back toward the guards and the gate. The gravel crunched loud under her feet, and she could hear shouting behind her and the sound of boots on pavement, and she ran hard, the kind of running that uses everything you have and asks questions later. The front door of the main house was 30 feet away. 20. She hit the steps, grabbed the door handle, shoved. Unlocked. She went through it and pulled it shut behind her and stood in the entrance hall of Jisoo-young's house, breathing hard, one hand braced against the door, listening to the shouting outside get louder and then gradually stop. Like someone had called the dogs off. The entrance hall was large. Marble floor. High ceiling. A staircase curving up on the right side. Everything clean and spare and expensive in the way that does not announce itself. Completely silent. She stood there for a moment, let her breathing even out, pushed her hair back from her face. Then she started moving, past the staircase, down the hallway on the left, which had the look of a working part of the house rather than a showpiece. Doors slightly less polished, floor slightly more worn. She was looking for an office. Something administrative. A room where a man who ran what Jisoo-young ran would actually spend his time. Third door on the left. She pushed it open. And stopped. It was already occupied. Jisoo-young sat behind a wide darkwood desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a tablet in his hand that he lowered slowly as she walked in. He looked at her the same way he had looked at her last night in the firelight, that expression without a single clean name, except now there was no chaos around them, no fire, no crowd. Just a quiet room and morning light coming through tall windows, and the two of them looking at each other across a desk. He did not look surprised. Not even slightly. You broke into my house, he said. Your guards dragged me across your driveway and called me an assassin, she said. I made a reasonable adjustment. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. The idea of one maybe passing through too fast to settle. He looked at her face. At the graze on her palm from the fence. At the mud on her left knee from the gravel. You came back, he said. You have a traitor inside your organization, Amelia said. The bomb was planted in the right car. That is not luck. That is inside information. Whoever tried to kill you last night is still close to you, still trusted, and you have no idea who it is. The almost smile was completely gone now. His eyes had gone very still. Sit down, he said. I'm fine standing. Amelia Harper, he said. Sit down. She went very quiet inside herself, because she had not told him her name. She had not told anyone in that gatehouse her name. She had not shown identification or said a single word about who she was beyond what she had said in the moment. He already knew. He had already known before she walked through his door. She pulled out the chair across from his desk and sat down, slowly, without taking her eyes off his face. You did your homework fast, she said. I did it last night, he said, before I went to sleep. A beat. You came back to warn me, he said. Not a question this time. Something different in his voice. Something that had moved slightly from the cold calculating register into something she could not immediately categorize. Even after you knew I had your name. Someone inside your house helped plan last night, Amelia said. That means you are not safe in your own home. I thought you should know that before whoever it is gets a second chance. Jisoo looked at her for a long moment. Then he set the tablet down on the desk and leaned back in his chair and said nothing for what felt like a very long time. Outside the office windows, the gray October morning had not gotten any lighter. The estate grounds were quiet now. No more shouting. No more boots on gravel. Just the trees along the eastern fence moving slightly in a wind she could not hear from inside the room. You translated documents for an intermediary named Kwon Byung-soo, Jisoo said finally. Approximately 2 years ago. For months of work. Then you disappeared. Amelia said nothing. Kwon said you found out what the documents contained and walked away. A pause. He also said you never told anyone what you had read. I didn't, she said. Why not? She looked at him steadily. Because I had no interest in being used by either side. Another long silence. And yet, Jisoo said, here you are. Here I am, Amelia agreed. Which should tell you something about how seriously I am taking the fact that someone in your inner circle wants you dead. He was quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet now, not the calculating stillness of before. Something heavier, something that had more underneath it. "Who sent you to the gala?" he said. "Anonymous message to an email address I have never shared publicly. Someone knew your history." "Yes, and knew you would come." "Apparently." His jaw tightened slightly. "Just slightly. Then we have more than one problem." "Yes," Amelia said. "We do." The morning light shifted as a cloud moved somewhere outside. The room went slightly dimmer and then lighter again. And in that brief, quiet shift, something settled between them. Not comfort, not trust, nothing that simple, but a recognition. The particular recognition of two people who have both, separately, run out of the option of pretending this situation is something they can walk away from. Jisoo reached forward and pressed a button on the desk intercom. "No one enters this office," he said into it. "And someone bring Ms. Harper something to eat. She has been awake all night." Amelia looked at him. He looked back at her with an expression that finally had a name. Respect. Reluctant, careful, and completely real. If you are still watching, good. Because what just happened in that office is only the beginning, and the next part. It is going to change everything you thought you understood about this story. Hit that like button if Amelia already has you nervous, and subscribe so you do not what comes next. The investigation started quietly. That was the thing about Jisoo Young that Amelia had not expected. Not the control, she had expected that, and not the stillness, she had expected that too. But the quietness of how he moved when he had decided to do something. No announcements. No dramatic declarations. He simply began, and the people around him adjusted to the fact that something had shifted without being told directly that it had. By noon on that gray October Saturday, 3 things had happened. Jisoo had pulled the security footage from the Astor House Gala and every camera within 4 blocks of Madison and Main for the 48 hours preceding the explosion. He had assigned 2 people he trusted. Only 2, which told Amelia something about how seriously he was taking her warning, to go through it frame by frame. He had also, quietly and without explanation, reorganized the duty rotations of his entire security team so that no single guard knew more than 1 hour of his schedule at a time. Small moves. Careful moves. The kind of moves that do not alert a traitor that they have been suspected. Amelia watched all of it from the corner of his office where he had set up a second chair and a small table with a laptop on it, because when she had stood up after breakfast and said she was leaving, he had looked at her with that flat, certain expression and said, very simply, "No, not a request, not a suggestion. You said someone used your email to get you to that corner," he said, "which means someone already connected you to me. Leaving this house does not make you safer. It makes you easier to reach." She had wanted to argue. She had a whole argument ready, about her apartment, about her neighbor Miss Odette, who would notice if she was gone, about the careful invisible life she had built that depended on her being in it regularly enough that no one noticed anything unusual. But she sat back down, because he was right, and she was tired of pretending otherwise. It was on the second day that the footage showed them something. Amelia was at her corner table when Jisoo's head came up from the screen across the room. He looked at the footage for another long moment without speaking. Then he turned the screen so she could see it. Security camera. Parking garage across from the Astor House. Timestamp, 11:42 a.m. on the day of the gala. 8 hours before the explosion. A man in a gray maintenance uniform walking through the lower level of the garage. Unhurried. Carrying a bag. He stopped beside a pillar near the elevator bank, set the bag down, spent approximately 4 minutes doing something that the camera angle made impossible to see clearly, then picked the bag up and walked back out. Amelia leaned forward. He was setting a relay, she said. A signal booster for a remote detonator. Which means the bomb was already in the car before that moment. She looked up. How far in advance was the SUV assigned to that detail? Jisoo's expression had gone very still. 3 days, he said. Then the bomb was planted within that 3-day window. And whoever planted it knew which vehicle was assigned. She held his gaze. How many people inside this house knew the vehicle assignment? He did not answer immediately, which was itself an answer. Too many, he said finally. Low. Something underneath the word that was not quite anger, but was related to it. Cross-reference it, Amelia said. Everyone who had access to that assignment. Then pull their communications for the last 2 weeks. Anything going out through channels that are not your standard internal system. Personal phones, outside email, anything. He looked at her for a moment with an expression she was starting to recognize. The one that appeared when she said something that matched or exceeded what he had already been thinking, and he was deciding whether that was impressive or alarming. "You have done this before," he said. "I have read a lot of documents," she said carefully. He held her gaze for one more second, then turned back to the screen. The name came on the third day. Devereaux Bryson, head of exterior security. 8 years with the organization. The kind of tenure that builds into something that looks like loyalty from every angle. Jisoo had hired him personally, back when the Memphis operation was still establishing itself, and Jisoo needed people he could anchor to without second-guessing. Amelia watched Jisoo's face when the name came up on the communications analysis. Watched the way something moved through it. Not surprise, exactly. Something older and worse than surprise. The particular expression of a person who has realized that the thing they trusted most was the thing that hurt them. He sat with it for a moment. Then, who else? Because Devereaux had not been working alone. The communications showed a pattern of contact with an outside number that traced back, through 2 layers of routing, to a business registered in Kansas City, Missouri. A business that Jisoo recognized immediately, and that made his jaw go tight in a way it had not gone tight before. Callaway Mercantile. A front. A very thin, very old front for a rival organization that had been trying to push into Memphis for 3 years. Led by a man named Stellan Voss, who had built his operation in Kansas City the same way Jisoo's father had built his, except without the discipline. Voss was louder, more aggressive. The kind of man who does not negotiate when he believes he can simply eliminate. Voss sent the sniper, Jisoo said. It was not a question. And had someone inside give him the vehicle assignment and the schedule, Amelia said. 2-layer approach. If the sniper missed, the bomb was the backup. And if both failed, he would try again. She paused. He will try again. Jisoo stood up from the desk and walked to the window and stood there for a moment looking out at the estate grounds in the afternoon light. His hands were at his sides. His shoulders were very level. But something in the line of his back told her that what he was feeling was enormous and that he was managing it the way he managed everything. From the inside out, quietly, without letting it change his surface. Devereaux has a son, he said. Quiet. 9 years old. I went to his school play last spring. Amelia said nothing. 8 years, he said. Still looking out the window. 8 years and I never, he stopped. Let the sentence stay unfinished. Maybe because finishing it would have required naming what he was feeling, and naming it would have made it too real. She understood that. She understood it specifically and personally, and did not say so. There's a second name, she said instead. Gently but clearly, because gentleness without clarity does not actually help anyone. He turned from the window. The communications analysis flagged a second contact pattern, she said. Less frequent, different routing, but it connects to the same outside number. She turned the laptop screen toward him. Marisol Chung, your household manager. 14 years. The silence that followed that was different from all the previous silences. It was the silence of something breaking that had been load-bearing. Jisoo looked at the screen for a long time without speaking, and Amelia sat very still and did not fill the silence, because some silences need to exist for exactly as long as they need to exist, and filling them too early is its own kind of cruelty. 14 years, he said finally, very quietly. I'm sorry, Amelia said. And she meant it, completely, without performance, in the way you mean something when you have also lost things you trusted, and you know exactly what the weight of that feels like. He looked at her, and something in the way he looked at her shifted slightly, just slightly, like a door opening a very small degree in a wall that had been solid. Then it closed again. But she had seen it. The days that followed were strange in a way that Amelia did not have good language for. Strange because she was living in Jisoo Young's house, which was something she could not have predicted 6 days ago and could not fully explain now even to herself. Strange because the investigation was ongoing and delicate and required her to be present and involved in a world she had spent 2 years actively leaving. Strange because the danger was real and continuous and Stellan Voss was still out there in Kansas City, presumably annoyed that 2 attempts had failed, presumably planning a third. But also strange for reasons that had nothing to do with any of that. It was the evenings, mostly. The investigation work happened in the daytime, methodical, focused, the 2 of them working in parallel and occasionally together, building the picture piece by piece. But the evenings were different. The house got quieter. The staff who were still trusted moved to their quarters. The guards ran their rotations outside. And somewhere in the middle of all that quiet, she and Jisoo would end up in the same room. The kitchen, usually, or the long sitting room at the back of the house that faced the garden, and the conversation would drift from the work into something else. Not planned, not designed, just happening, the way things happen when two people are in close quarters and the daytime structure falls away, and there is nothing left to hide behind. She learned things, small things mostly, that he made his own tea in the evenings because he did not like the way anyone else made it, that he had taught himself to play the piano at 30 and was still not very good at it, and did not seem bothered by that at all, that he had a complicated relationship with his father's memory, a man who had built something impressive and handed it to his son along with everything that came with it, the weight and the responsibility and the danger, without ever asking whether his son had wanted any of it. He learned things about her too. She told him more than she had intended to, not because he pushed, but because he had the unusual quality of asking questions and then actually waiting for the real answer instead of the comfortable one. He found out about Huntsville, about the years in Seoul, about the documents she had translated and the moment she understood what they were and the immediate, certain decision to stop. "You were not afraid," he said one evening. They were in the kitchen, late. The kind of late where the whole house was asleep except for the two of them. "I was terrified," she said. "But you stopped anyway. Being afraid does not mean you get to do the wrong thing," she said. "It just means the right thing costs more." He was quiet for a moment, turning his tea glass between his hands. Then, "I have been doing the wrong thing for a long time because the right thing cost more than I was willing to pay." She looked at him. He looked back at her steadily, not asking for anything, not performing, just saying it. The way you say true things when you are too tired to dress them up, and the person across from you has already seen enough of you that pretending seems beside the point. "Maybe," she said carefully, "the price changes depending on what you decide matters." Something shifted in his face, small but real. "You are," he started, then stopped. "I am what?" she said. He shook his head slightly, not refusing to answer. More like the answer existed somewhere that words were not quite reaching. But she thought she understood it anyway. On the 8th day, she was gone. Not forever. Not voluntarily. She had gone to her apartment, with two of Jisoo's most trusted guards, both of whom she had by then learned to at least tolerate, to pick up documents she needed. A hard drive she kept in a fireproof box under the floorboard of her closet. Papers she had been holding for 2 years that she had decided, finally, were relevant to the picture they were building. She was inside for 11 minutes. The guards were at the door and in the car outside. Everything was as secure as it was possible to make a second-floor Binghampton apartment. 11 minutes. She came downstairs, and both guards were on the ground. Not dead. She checked immediately, hands on their throats, feeling for pulse. Both alive, both breathing, both hit with something fast-acting and professional that had put them down without noise and without damage. She had the hard drive in her bag. She was turning to run. The black hood came over her head from behind, and the world went away. She did not know how long the drive was. Long enough that she fell asleep once and woke up still moving. She kept track of turns when she could left, right, long straight stretch, left. But somewhere in the 3rd hour she lost the count and gave up on it and focused instead on staying calm. Staying present. Not using her energy on fear when she needed it for what came after. They did not hurt her. That was notable. Whoever had taken her was not interested in hurting her, which meant she was not the point. She was leverage, a message, a way of getting to someone else. She thought about that for a long time in the dark. When the hood came off, she was in a room. Industrial. High ceilings, concrete floor, the particular smell of a building that had been used for storage and then repurposed for something that did not like windows. Somewhere in the distance, traffic. Freeway, maybe. No way to know which one. A man sat across from her in a folding chair like he was waiting for a bus. Medium height. Light hair going silver at the temples. Pale eyes that moved over her face the way a camera does, recording, not feeling. He wore a coat that cost more than her rent, and he was completely relaxed in a way that was its own kind of threat. Stellan Voss. She recognized him from a photograph she had seen once, 2 years ago, in a document she was never supposed to have read. "Ms. Harper," he said, pleasantly, like they were meeting at a conference. "I appreciate your patience. You put my guards on the ground," she said. "They are fine. I have no interest in unnecessary complications." He tilted his head slightly. "I also have no interest in harming you." I want to be very clear about that. Then what do you want? I want you to deliver a message. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. To Jisoo Young. Tell him that Memphis does not have to be a conflict. Tell him there is a version of this where both organizations survive and thrive and nobody loses anything they cannot afford to lose. A pause. And tell him that if he chooses the other version, the version where he retaliates for what happened outside the Astor house, I have enough people inside his organization to make sure he does not get a second chance to regret that choice. Amelia looked at him steadily. How many people do you have inside? A small smile. Enough. More than 2. The smile did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. Just slightly. She filed that away. You will give him the message, Voss said. Standing now. Done with the conversation, apparently, in the way powerful men are done with conversations, unilaterally. And you will encourage him to take the reasonable option. Because you are, from what I understand, a reasonable woman. And you have, I think, some influence over how he is currently thinking. She said nothing. He cares whether you are safe, Voss said simply. That is a new development for Jisoo Young. And new developments can be very useful things, depending on who is paying attention to them. He walked to the door. Stopped with his hand on the frame. Someone will drive you back to Memphis, he said. Think carefully about what you say to him, Ms. Harper. The reasonable option is available, but it has an expiration date. The door closed. Amelia sat in the concrete room in the silence and thought about what he had said. All of it. Not the message. The message was almost irrelevant. What mattered was what sat underneath it. Asterisk, he cares whether you are safe. That is a new development. Asterisk. Voss thought that was leverage. But what Voss did not know, what he could not know, because it had only become clear to Amelia herself in the last 8 days of late evenings and kitchen conversations and stolen, careful moments, was that it was not only Jisoo who had developed something new. She had too. And that changed the calculation considerably. Still here. Good, because that ending just changed everything. If you did not see that coming, wait until you see what Jisoo does when he finds out she is gone. Like this video if Amelia just became your favorite character, and subscribe right now, because next scene is the one that is going to break you wide open. Jisoo knew she was gone before his phone rang. That was the part he could not explain afterward. Not to his team, not to himself, not in any language that made logical sense. He had been in the office reviewing the final layer of the communications analysis when something shifted in the house. Not a sound, not a signal. Something quieter than both of those things. A change in the atmosphere of the building itself. The way a room feels different when something that was supposed to be in it is suddenly not. He did not panic. That was not the right word for what happened inside him. Panic was loud and scattered and moved in too many directions at once. What happened inside Jisoo Young was the opposite of scattered. Everything narrowed. Everything that was not directly relevant to finding Amelia Harper became temporarily invisible, like the rest of the world had simply stepped back and agreed to wait. He called his 2 most trusted people, Nara Booker, who handled intelligence and had been with him since Atlanta, and a man named Tobias Wren, who had come recommended through a channel that Jisoo had verified 3 times before trusting and who had in the years since never given him a reason to regret it. Not security in the traditional sense. Tobias was quieter than that, more precise, the kind of person who could find information in places that did not officially contain any. Voss, Jisoo said. Not a guess. A conclusion. He picked up his phone. The guard's voice on the other end was still groggy from whatever they had used to put him under, words coming out slightly thick and slow. But the information was clear enough. She was gone. Jisoo set the phone down on the desk. He sat very still for exactly 4 seconds. And then he stood up, and the stillness was over. Probably, Tobias said. The method is his. Fast, professional, no damage to the guards. He wants her functional, which means he wants something from her. He wants something from me, Jisoo said. She is the delivery system. Nara was already at the laptop. Kansas City operation has 3 known properties in the Tennessee corridor. 2 warehouses and a logistics office in the Hickory Hill area. If he took her locally, Jisoo said. He would not move her across state lines. Too much exposure. He looked at the screen. Which one? The warehouse on Chulahoma Road has been showing increased vehicle activity for the last 10 days, Nara said. We flagged it as possible staging for another attempt. But it fits for a holding location too. Jisoo looked at the address on the screen for a moment. How long to put a team together, he said. 40 minutes, Tobias said. You have 25. But here was the thing nobody planned for. 12 minutes into the preparation, teams being assembled, vehicles being checked, routes being mapped, Jisoo's personal phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered. Mr. Jung. A woman's voice. Calm. Familiar. He went very still. Amelia, he said. I'm fine, she said immediately. Clearly. Like she knew that was the first thing he needed to hear, and she was not going to make him ask. I'm in a car. They're taking me back to Memphis. I'm not hurt. The tightness in his chest did something complicated. Not releasing entirely. Not yet, not until he could see her with his own eyes. But shifting. Making room. Where? I don't know exactly. Freeway. Maybe 40 minutes out. A pause. The small pause of someone choosing words carefully. He gave me a message to deliver. Voss. Yes. Another pause. Shorter. I will deliver it. But I need you to hear something else first, and I need you to actually listen and not react until I am finished. He sat down slowly in his chair. I'm listening, he said. He told me he has people inside your organization. More than Devereaux and Marisol. He implied it. He did not say it directly, which means he was either telling the truth and being strategic about how much he revealed, or he was bluffing to make you hesitate. She stopped. Let that land. I think he was bluffing. Here is why. When I asked how many people he had inside and I mentioned the number 2, something moved in his face. Just slightly. The way people react when a number confirms their actual ceiling rather than being safely below it. Jisoo was quiet. He has 2, she said. We already found both of them. Which means his entire intelligence advantage inside this organization is gone, and he does not know that yet. And that means the leverage he thinks he has for this negotiation he is proposing, it does not exist. Silence on the line. Amelia, Jisoo said. The message is that he wants a sit-down, she said. A negotiated division of territory. Memphis stays yours, he keeps Kansas City and the corridor north of it. Everyone agrees to boundaries and stops trying to eliminate each other. A beat. He thinks you will consider it because you care about, she stopped briefly, because you have something to lose now that you did not have before. The silence that followed was a specific kind of silence. The kind that exists between two people who are communicating something that neither of them has said directly yet, and both of them know it, and neither of them is quite ready to be the one to close that distance first. What do you think I should do? He said. I think, she said carefully, that a man who plants bombs and sends snipers and kidnaps people as leverage is not a man who negotiates in good faith. I think any agreement you reach with Stellenbosch is a pause, not a resolution. And I think you already know that. Yes, he said. So the question is not whether to negotiate, she said. The question is what you do instead. And whatever that is, another pause, longer this time. I need it to not be the thing that turns you into the version of yourself that cannot come back from it. Because I have seen that happen to people, and it is not, she stopped. It is not what, he said quietly. It is not who you actually are, she said. Underneath all of this, I have been in your house for 8 days, and I have seen enough to know the difference. Something happened in Jisoo's chest that he did not have a name for. Something that had been compressed for a very long time in a very small space, and was now, slowly and without his full permission, beginning to take up the room it had always actually needed. Come home, he said, very quietly. A beat. I'm on my way, she said. She arrived 41 minutes later. The car Voss had put her and dropped her at the end of the Germantown Parkway, 100 yards from the estate gate, which was either a show of confidence or a show of contempt, probably both. She walked the 100 yards alone in the October afternoon light with her bag on her shoulder and the hard drive still inside it, because whoever had taken her had not bothered to search the bag, which confirmed that she was never the target. She was always just the message. The gate opened before she reached it. Jisoo was standing in the driveway. Not at the door. Not behind glass. In the driveway, in the open, hands at his sides, watching her walk up the drive with an expression that had finally, completely, run out of its careful management and was just present. Real. All of it visible in a way she had not seen on his face before. She stopped a few feet in front of him. Looked at him. He looked back at her. You are not hurt, he said. Quiet. Checking. Not quite believing the phone call until he could confirm it with his own eyes. I am not hurt, she said. He nodded once. Slowly. Like the nod was doing work that words were not available for. Then, You analyzed his bluff in the back of a car while being taken back from a kidnapping. I had time, she said. You called me before you even knew if the phone would work. It worked. Amelia. Just so. They looked at each other. And the October air was cool, and the trees along the fence were doing their slow movement in the wind, and the whole estate was quiet around them in the particular way it got quiet in the late afternoon when the day was finishing itself up. Come inside, he said. She did. What happened with Devereaux Bryson and Marisol Chung was handled quietly. Jisoo did not do it loudly. Did not make it a spectacle or a warning or a display of power for the benefit of anyone watching. He sat with each of them separately in the office with Nara present as a witness, and he gave them each the same thing. The evidence, laid out completely, and then silence. Room to respond. Devereaux talked for 20 minutes. About debt. About threats against his son. About a contact from Voss's organization that had started 2 years ago as something that seemed manageable and had grown, slowly, into something he could not find a way out of. He cried at the end. Not performing. Actually cried. Jisoo listened to all of it without interrupting. Then he said, Your son is not touched. That is not how I operate, and it was never how I operated, and whoever told you otherwise was lying to make you cooperative. A pause. You should have come to me. Devereaux had no answer for that. Maybe because it was true and he had known it was true and had been too afraid and too ashamed to act on it. Marisol was different. Marisol sat across the desk with her hands folded and her face composed and said very little. She did not explain, did not apologize. When Jisoo asked her why, she said simply, You inherited this. You did not build it. You do not know what it cost the people around you while your father was building it. Jisoo sat with that for a long time. That may be true, he said finally. But it does not make what you did right. No, she agreed. It does not. Both of them were removed from the organization. Quietly. Completely. With arrangements made, because Jisoo was not his worst impulses, and Amelia had been right about that. That did not leave them destroyed, but made clear that the chapter was finished. It was not a soft outcome, but it was a human one. Stellan Voss was a more complicated problem, because Voss was not going to stop. That was the honest truth that Jisoo had known from the moment the first shot was fired outside the Astor house, and that Amelia had confirmed with her assessment of the man in that concrete room. A negotiation with Voss was not a solution. It was a delay with a countdown attached. So Jisoo did something that Voss did not expect. He went to the people above Voss. This was the part of the story that Amelia only understood in pieces, because Jisoo kept certain things away from her deliberately. Not because he did not trust her, but because the less she knew about specific operations, the less exposure she carried. She understood this and accepted it, because it was the same instinct that had made her fold up her own history and keep it small for 2 years. But she understood the outcome. Voss had been operating in Kansas City under a structure that included partners. Other organizations whose interests aligned with his in certain ways and diverged sharply in others. Jisoo had history with 2 of those partners. Old history. The kind that had been carefully maintained and never called in because calling it in cost something. He called it in. The details of what happened in Kansas City over the following 3 weeks were not things that ended up in any newspaper. Stellan Voss did not disappear. That was not what happened, and it was not what Jisoo wanted. What happened was more effective and more permanent than disappearance. Voss found himself, very suddenly, without partners, without the backing that had made his aggression possible, and without any realistic path toward expanding into Memphis or anywhere else. A man without backing is just a man. And a man without backing who has already shown his hand is a man who has lost. Voss called once. Jisoo did not take the call. Had Tobias send a message instead. 3 sentences, polite and final, that closed the door on every version of this conversation going forward. It was over. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. Then came the part that neither of them had planned for, which was everything after. The investigation was finished. The traitors were gone. The external threat had been neutralized. The reasons that had kept Amelia inside the Jung estate, practical, safety-related, logical reasons that both of them had understood and agreed on, those reasons no longer existed. She packed her bag on a Thursday morning 3 weeks after the night outside the Astor house. The hard drive went back in first. Then her clothes, neatly folded. Then the few other things she had brought over in the days after she arrived. The apartment in Binghamton was still hers. Miss Odette had left 3 voicemails that ranged from concerned to mildly irritated to philosophical, and Amelia owed her a real conversation and probably a Sunday morning coffee. She was zipping the bag when she heard the knock at the door. Jesus stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. No jacket. Sleeves rolled up the way they always were in the working part of the day. He looked at the packed bag on the bed, and then at her, and his face had that expression again. The one she had been cataloging for 3 weeks without ever quite finishing the definition. "You are leaving," he said. "I was always going to leave," she said. "This was never supposed to be permanent." "No," he agreed. "It was not supposed to be. A beat." "But," she said. "But," he said. They looked at each other across the room with the bag between them and 3 weeks of late evenings and kitchen conversations and stolen careful moments stacked up behind the silence, and the word "but" sitting in the air like a door left open. "I don't know how to do this," Amelia said finally. And she meant all of it. Not just whatever was happening between them, but the larger question of what her life looked like now, intersecting with his life, with everything his life contained. The weight of it, the risk of it, the fact that choosing to stay in any real sense meant choosing a world she had spent years choosing to leave. "I don't know how to do this either," Jesus said. "I have not," he stopped. "Started differently. The way I have lived. It did not leave room for this. I did not leave room for it. On purpose." "Why?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because room means risk. And risk meant something could be used against me." He paused. "And then you walked into me outside a hotel and kissed me and whispered that there was a bomb in my car, and I spent the next 3 weeks trying to figure out how to put you back in a category that made sense, and I could not do it." Amelia looked at him for a long moment. "I am not a category," she said. "No," he said. "You are not." She picked up the bag, held it, did not move toward the door. "I need my apartment," she said. "I need my own space and my own work and my neighbor who plays gospel music too loud. I need to not disappear into someone else's life the way I almost disappeared into someone else's documents 2 years ago." "Yes," he said, without hesitation. "And I need," she stopped. "Tried again. Whatever this is, if it is going to be anything, it has to be honest. All of it. Not protected, not managed, not kept at a distance because it's safer. Honest." He looked at her steadily. "That is a significant ask, given the life I have led." "I know," she said. "I am asking anyway." A long silence. Then, "Yes," he said. Again. Simply. Like the word had been waiting and had finally found the right moment to come out. She set the bag down. Not because she was staying, but because this conversation was not finished, and finishing it mattered more than the bag. 6 months later, Memphis had moved into a real spring. The kind with actual warmth in it instead of the fake warmth of early March that tricks you into leaving your jacket at home and then costs you for it by afternoon. The garden behind the house Jisoo had bought, not the estate, something smaller, something that was different from his father's world in ways both visible and not, was doing what gardens do in April. Coming back. Filling in. The kind of slow, patient return that does not announce itself, but simply arrives one morning, and you look out the window and realize everything is green again. Amelia was standing in the middle of it with her shoes off because the grass was the particular soft thickness that makes you want to feel it directly, and she had stopped apologizing for the small things that made her happy. She heard him come out the back door. He came and stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, looking out at the garden the same way she was looking at it. Not at any specific thing, just at all of it together. "Nara called," he said. "And the Kansas City situation is stable. Tobias confirmed it this morning." A pause. "It is finished. All of it." She nodded. The garden was quiet around them. A bird somewhere. The distant sound of a lawnmower on the next street. Ordinary sounds. The sounds of a life that was not holding its breath. "I have been thinking," Jisoo said. "About what?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. Not the managed stillness she had first seen outside the Astor house. Not the stillness of a man controlling what he showed. Just thoughtfulness. Real and unhurried. "About what you said the night we met," he said. "The words you whispered. There is a bomb in your car." He paused. "You saved my life before you knew me. Before you had any reason to. Before there was anything in it for you." "There was something in it for me," she said. "My conscience." "Your conscience," he repeated, like he was turning the word over. "I have spent 32 years operating without much interference from mine. And then you," He stopped, shook his head slightly. "I what?" she said. He turned to look at her. The spring light was the particular gold of late afternoon, and it was doing something to his face that made him look younger, maybe, or just more present. Like the careful distance he maintained from his own feelings had finally, gradually, over 6 months of honest and sometimes difficult conversations, come down enough to let the light in. "You did not just save my life," he said. "That night, and then every night after it." A pause. "You gave me a reason to want it. The life. Not just to continue it out of obligation or momentum, or because stopping felt like losing, but to actually want it." He looked at her steadily. "I did not know I had stopped wanting it until you showed me the difference." Amelia stood in the grass in the April garden and felt something move through her that was not sadness, and was not happiness exactly, but was something larger than both of them. The feeling of arriving somewhere you did not know you were heading and recognizing it anyway. "Jisoo," she said. "You are the only thing worth protecting," he said quietly. "I have protected territory and assets and operations and my father's legacy, and not one of them ever felt like this. Not one of them ever made me want to be different than I was." He paused. "You make me want to be different than I was." She looked at him for a long moment. "You already are," she said. "You have been for a while. You just needed someone to point it out." Something happened in his face. The last of it, the last careful layer of management and distance, came away. And what was underneath it was just him, clear and present and real. He reached out and took her hand. Not dramatically. Not with any performance of the moment. Just took it, the way you take the hand of someone you have decided to stop pretending you do not need. She let him. They stood in the garden in the April light with the birds still singing somewhere, and the lawnmower still going on the next street, and all the ordinary sounds of an ordinary life that had been built, slowly and deliberately, and at considerable cost, out of something that had almost ended before it began. And Amelia Harper, who had once kissed a Korean Mafia boss outside a Memphis hotel to keep a sniper from taking his shot, and whispered the most important 4 words of both their lives into his ear, and spent the next 6 months learning what it meant to choose something and stay, felt, for the first time in longer than she could accurately calculate, completely at home. Not because of the garden or the house or the spring light. Because of the hand in hers. And the man who had finally, after 32 years of protecting everything except the things that mattered, learned to hold on. And that is how you save a mafia boss and accidentally save yourself in the process. If this story wrecked you in the best way possible, you already know what to do. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling me which moment got you, and subscribe because there are more stories coming that you are absolutely not ready for. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. That means everything.